Hello, folks. Welcome to today's Redfish 2024.4 release webinar. My name is Jeff Otter with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I'm one of the Redfish Forum co-chairs, which is the working group within the DMTF standards body that owns the specification. And with me is Mike Ranieri. Mike.
Hi, thanks. Yep, I'm Mike Ranieri from Dell Technologies, and as Jeff said, I'm the other co-chair of the Redfish Forum.
All right, and with that, we will get into today's release topics. As we normally talk about at these release webinars, we do want to call attention to a lot of the documentation and materials that are available on the DMTF website. The first set of materials here are a set of documents. These are all related to the schema and data model content that gets frequently updated as we make more and more additions to the Redfish standard. These documents are all updated automatically, and new releases are done. And they're kept in sync with the schema. So you'll find versions of these that match the releases. So what all four of these documents are currently have been revised up to version 2024.4. The four documents, the first two, the data model specification and the Redfish resource and schema guide, are human readable forms of the schema files, so that you don't have to try to parse all of the machine readable bits. These are placed into much more document and human friendly forms. The same is true for the message registries, and that's the message registry guide does the same thing for that content. And then lastly, the Redfish property guide is is effectively an index reference for every property. So if you have if nothing else but the property name to go by, that will give you kind of an alphabetic lookup to find out what schemas or is where one or more schemas that have that property, and you can get some context from there. The other resource that's available is a GitHub repository that's available publicly, and there's the link there. It's under the DMTF's GitHub organization. Redfish publication is a mirror of the release materials that are normally in zip file bundles, but the publications repository allows you to clone that repo and then either leverage the machine readable schema files and message registries in your own development, or to just effectively keep up to date with all that material by using the GitHub processes. So there are folders under there for the four different or the four supported schema language formats, and then one to contain all of the message registries. And then lastly is the set of conformance tools. So if you are a developer, either of services or client software, or an end user looking to check conformance of a particular product, there are open source tools to do that, to help you do that. The Redfish protocol validator and the service validator check the conformance of the protocol, basically the HTTP portions of the spec, and then the service validator looks for the payloads and the JSON content to make sure that it aligns with the published schema. And then lastly, the interop validator will apply a Redfish profile that you may have created or may have acquired from another organization like the Open Compute Project, and then can test conformance of a particular product to that profile. All right, and so with that, let's get into the content of this release. This is release 2024.4 that became public. It was released in December, but the public availability was mid-January, and that is available on the website, and we'll give you a link to that, of course, as always. So here's a summary of what's covered in this release. There was just an errata version of the Redfish specification. It just corrected some text explaining how the select and expand query parameters. It really was the examples and some of that supporting text. So some minor things there. And then there was also an addition of one more organization, again, Open Compute, as the Open Compute Project, to allow them to use a specific OEM name, but that's it for the scheme, excuse me, for the specification. The schema bundle and the message registry bundles, those were both updated. We'll get into the schema contents and also the registry contents. There were two new registries created. Mike will give a little bit of details on these. There's what's called the account security registry and also a service communications registry. We had one new schema created for this release, the StorageMetrics schema, which contains performance, error metrics, the kinds of, bytes read, written, those kinds of things, specific, counters for errors, specific to storage subsystems. So that this is a little different than the drive metrics, but you'll see a lot of the same kind of things, but this is done at a storage subsystem level. Overall, there were 20 schemas that had minor revisions or effectively updates. There is the README file in the DSP 8010 bundle has that extensive changelog there. We won't go into all those details there, but if you want to look at the presentation that's part of this release, also downloadable from the website shown at the bottom there, it does go into that in a PowerPoint form, so you can or it's a PDF, but you can look at the changelog in that form as well. Mike will here in a second. We'll get into some of these some of the highlights here, but in short, we added the leak detector links and effectively allow those to be part of a chassis subsystem or the part of the chassis resource tree, and that was done to try to consolidate where leak detection resources occur regardless of the type of product. So as we expect that folks looking for the output or the status of leak detection subsystems, we would like to be able to find those more deterministically. So we've added those links in chassis to make that possible. Um, there were actions added. Speaking of leaks, there are actions added for controlling liquid cooling equipment. So Mike will go through those in more detail. Uh, and there were also some additions that added and clarified how to enable or disable some of the functionality related to what's called the security ID, which is a TCG, and I believe is that SCSI or NVMe where those specifications intersect, but the ability to either block the SID messages and in the kind of the related modes that causes, those were added to the storage schema. And again, all of that material, both the schemas, the schema bundles, the registries, and a version of this presentation with more details and changelog, those are all available on the DMTF website. So now I'm going to turn over to Mike and let him get into some details on those additions. Mike?
All right. Thank you, Jeff. So, as Jeff already indicated, one of the big pieces we added for this release were standardizing on several of the control mechanisms for coolant distribution units. This came from direct feedback from the industry for what types of control pieces exist in existing CDUs today. These are things you might find if you go into a CDU's web interface. There might be like a drop-down menu or some other form to fill out to set the different control points. So we have a few standard controls added to Redfish. Firstly, on the coolant connector resource, we added flow control liters per minute, supply temperature control Celsius, return temperature control Celsius, delta pressure control, delta temperature control Celsius. And so these allow you to configure a target flow rate or a target supply temperature leaving your CDU or a target return temperature coming back to the CDU. There may be some mutual exclusion. Certain CDUs may or may not implement the full set. They may only implement one or two, but it would all be self-discoverable through these unique properties. And so what would typically happen is you would say, hey, in my infrastructure, I need to have a steady flow rate going to my downstream equipment. And so you would use the flow control liters per minute to say, I want to set this to 50 liters per minute. And then based on that set point, the CDU will adjust its pump speeds to achieve that desired set point. There are cases where, like I mentioned with mutual exclusion, you may only be allowed to set one or the other, but not both. And so when you set something like I need to uh, I need to set a desired flow control versus setting a desired delta pressure. Those may be mutually exclusive because they both would feed into the CDU's pump speed algorithm. So if you set flow control rate, it may turn off the delta pressure control. The other operation we added to a CDUs was a way to manually enable disable pumps. And so we added a new set mode action. And the primary usage of this is for servicing CDUs. So if you have a CDU that can take pumps offline and replace them without having to bring down the whole unit, you can turn off a pump, then you can pull it out, put in your new pump, and then turn it back on to get the system back up and running. So there are some products that allow for that hot swap capability. All right, going to the next slide, here are some examples for how you would set this. So this is an example for setting a desired flow control, a desired flow rate to your secondary coolant connector. It's a patch operation on the secondary coolant connector resource. And there is the flow control liters per minute control object. And in there, you set your set point to 45. In this case, it's 45 liters per minute is the desired flow rate. And then you set your control mode to override, which is the client's indicator that I'm telling you what the set point is. So this will override whatever the CDU may want to automatically adjust the set point to be. I've been finding that typically most of these are open-ended and require a person to configure it anyway. So it may always be in the override case for CDUs, but from a general control perspective, other controls just may be automatic. The device may have default set points and wants to self-regulate for that. The next example shows how to disable a pump. So this would be a post operation to the set mode action on the pump. And in there, you specify the mode parameter. In this case, we're disabling it. All right, if we go to the next slide. So we'll talk about the other major addition. We have a couple of new message registries and several significant updates. First, with the account security registry, this is a new standardized way uh, to generate audit logs or send security event notifications to an administrator about users who are attempting to access your service. Maybe they successfully logged in. Maybe they're coming in from a blocked IP address, and you need to flag that. These are not intended to come back as messages from client to service interactions. So if you fail to log in, the service is not going to tell you you gave me a bad password or your account is locked. This is really for the auditing and security administrator to look at. A couple of other examples. You gave invalid credentials. Maybe you gave an out-of-date session token. Maybe it was bad username and password. Uh, there's the account locked message to indicate when a user account is now locked because they exceeded too many failed logins. And then there's a user certificate replaced a notification to indicate when a user decided to install a new identity certificate. There's also a new message registry for service communications, and this is to show in a standard manner connection issues a service may be having with external devices. Classic example is with event subscriptions. There may be error cases where the service is unable to communicate with the listener. Maybe it takes an HTTP error. Maybe there's a network timeout. And so there are new messages to indicate these types of communication issues the service is having with remote entities. To go along with the CDU controls, we added several new messages to the environmental message registry. It was to support logging and eventing of liquid cooling specific equipment. So we have several new messages related to pressure, flow rate, fluid level, leak detection, and pumps. So this new registry will help with all the conversions from existing SNMP traps to using proper Redfish eventing. We added a couple new messages to the heartbeat event to indicate, in a standard manner when a service is online versus when it's shutting down. So some examples around using this would be, maybe you did a firmware update and you need to reset your manager. So the manager could broadcast the service shutting down event to say, I'm going offline, I'll come back later. And then the Redfish service started is an indicator that, yep, I'm alive now. You can start sending me requests. We also added a couple of new events to platform reset. So just a standard way to say, well, my system took a reset. So we have a standard a message for that now. We also have a platform reset watchdog timer. So that's a way to differentiate, did you take an expected reset versus a watchdog type of reset where you may have to investigate, why did the system hang? We also added new messages of storage device to support the security ID related messages. So when we're blocking or unblocking or fail to authenticate with drives, there's standard messages to show those types of events. And then we also added to base access unauthorized and access forbidden to correspond with the HTTP 401 and 403 responses. Okay. So now we'll open it up to Q&A. We did have one question come in through the registration. It was asking about supporting supercapacitor shelves. Does Redfish have any plans to support that? Well, we do have similar requests for UPSs and that type of modeling. I think that would be a very reasonable extension to that type of model. I know one of the things that we've been looking for on that front is having a subject matter expert feedback on those types of models. Within DMTF, we don't exactly have the resident experts to really drive it. So we did publish a UPS whip a while ago, and we're still waiting to see if it's the right direction to take.
Yeah, that work in progress bundle is of proposals for UPS and or more generally the energy storage or energy backup energy devices that's available on the website. It has been sitting there for a better part of a year or more. But we really don't want to try to complete that work until we get more feedback from users and vendors to make sure that we've done it correctly. So if the folks asking for that, if you are a vendor that are producing supercapacitor based shelves or any kind of backup energy storage, would love to hear from you. Either join the group, or you can make technology submissions through the feedback portal on the DMTF website. If you are if the person asking that is an actual end user, please contact your vendor and tell them that you would like to see Redfish support for those devices. All right, and folks you should be able to unmute yourself, or Shannon can unmute you. But if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask during the live Q&A. I'm hearing no takers. And a reminder for folks on the call that we will have a roundtable discussion after we conclude the webinar. So if you'd prefer to ask that in a smaller audience, you can do so there.
All right. Well, that's it for the 2024.4 webinar. Thank you for attending. Up on the screen are various links to help get involved. You could go to the standards page on dmtf.org. We have the Redfish developer portal at redfish.dmtf.org. We have a public-facing user forum at redfishforum.com. So if you want to post questions and engage the community, that's one way to get involved. If you want to do more formal feedback submissions, there's the DMTF feedback portal. And then lastly, if you want to join, you could use the link at the bottom to get involved with the Redfish Forum. All right. Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you all, and we will move on to our roundtable.